If you're ready to enter 2023 with an arsenal full of fantastic recipes, I have 22 of my best recipes from 2022 just for you. Happy New Year and welcome to Meals with Maria. Today I picked out 22 of the absolute best recipes for my total of 124 videos in 2022. And I didn't do the exact math, but I usually put at least 3 recipes in each video. So if you do that multiplication out, I made at least 1 recipe for every day of the year for you in 2022. And I hope I can do at least the same in 2023. These recipes are the standout best recipes in my mind, at least when I looked back at the past year. I did kind of end in August because I had already chosen 22 amazing recipes. And I thought that, you probably have seen the September forward videos more recently, so we didn't need to share those quite yet again. There are also some amazing recipes in those last 3 or 4 months of the year as well. So I do have an amazing playlist that will show you all of the 2022 videos down the description box for you. Because this is a compilation video, there are sometimes older portions of it where I'm talking about prices that may not 100% match where we are today. There are also pictures of my son who's now over 1, who is quite little, but it's all fun, a great trip down memory lane, and the best of the best just for you, just to get you started in the new year.
We're going to get started with my favorite chicken Marsala recipe. I used this during a 10-day pantry challenge and it was absolutely fabulous. Now I have an amazing recipe I love to use for chicken Marsala and it's on bettycrocker.com, so I will post that below for you as well. All the recipes that I do have, I will make sure that they are down below in the description box. So I am just cutting up what I have is a very large chicken breast. So this is going to be enough for us for dinner. And then I'm going to actually add like 1 little piece so that Dan can have some chicken Marsala for lunch tomorrow as well. So I'm just cutting it in half and then I'm going to actually pound it out with a meat mallet. Make sure you put the saran wrap over the top there to make sure that the chicken doesn't splatter everywhere, because it, as much as you think it might not, it will. It will go everywhere. I've tried not to before, but you gotta use the saran wrap. And then I'm just like cutting this in half because for us, one of these pieces is perfect for Dan, one of these half pieces is perfect for me, and then the kids will actually share like a smaller piece. But you need more chicken, you have a bigger family, go ahead and do that. So I'm just taking my chicken and I am dredging it in some flour. It's that simple. Now take a couple tablespoons of olive oil and heat that in a medium pan over medium-high heat. And then to that, I'm just going to add in 2 cloves of finely chopped garlic, or I'm going to use a garlic press in this case, and 1 cup of fresh sliced mushrooms. I have baby bella mushrooms. I've used like regular white button mushrooms. Those work as well. It's kind of whatever you have. And I think like mushrooms you can buy dried too and then rehydrate them, which is a great thing to keep it in your pantry. So I'm just going to cook these up. The recipe also says to add in a 1/4 cup of fresh chopped parsley at this point, or you can use 1 tablespoon of parsley flakes, which is what I had. So I want to cook this for 5 minutes. And you want to add your chicken to the skillet and cook for about 8 minutes, turning once until brown on each side. Then you want to add a 1/2 cup of dry Marsala wine, which I did happen to have on hand, but the reason that I absolutely love this recipe and I feel like it's good for any time is that you can actually substitute chicken broth for this. So if you have chicken bouillon, that is all you need to add. Cook for 8 to 10 minutes until the chicken is fully cooked through and no longer pink in the center. And then you can see I'm adding just like a little bit of the pasta water to kind of bind the flavors. And then I'm going to add in some fresh cooked spaghetti. I was just cooking this on the side the whole time. I forgot to mention that earlier. And cooking that in there for just a few minutes. I had cooked it to al dente, and I really like that because it really coats the noodles and gives them some flavor too. But I can definitely attest to making this with chicken broth in the past and knowing that it really tastes as good, if not better, with chicken broth versus Marsala wine. So if for some reason you don't have that, because it's, it costs money just to buy Marsala wine for like 1 recipe, and I really have never seen another recipe that needed Marsala wine. So you don't need to buy it. it still tastes amazing with the chicken broth. So I'm just mixing everything really well together here, and this is what we had for dinner that night. Everybody loved it. Like, kids were a big fan. This is the first time that I've made this, I think, for in a while, and I was really craving it. So I was happy that I had those mushrooms on hand and that this was what I was able to cook up. And you can see I have this extra slice ready for Dan for lunch tomorrow, and we are all packed up. The next recipe is for a garlic butter chicken thigh. Now, garlic and butter, I am so in. All those things are delicious. There are only 5 ingredients in this recipe, and I will be using my trusty old, you can see very old Dutch oven that I still haven't cleaned yet. Also use a cast iron with a cover for this as well. Now, not shown, you want to pat your chicken thighs dry and put salt and pepper all over them. And then we're adding 1 tablespoon of olive oil, although I think at this point I only had canola oil, so I used canola oil in the bottom of the pan. You want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees and heat that olive oil on your skillet over medium heat. Once the olive oil is heated up, you want to add your chicken thighs. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The recipe calls for 5, but I did squeeze a 6th in there to make sure there was plenty of chicken for all of us. You want to cook the thighs until the skin is crispy, about 5 minutes. Once your chicken is flipped, add a 1/4 cup of butter and allow that to melt. While your butter's melting, you can add in 5 cloves of either crushed or minced garlic. You can see that I decided to mince mine. Once your butter is fully melted, you want to place this in the oven at 400 degrees for 30 minutes. Once the chicken comes out, you want to take that buttery garlic sauce and just spoon it over the top of the chicken as much as you can. That is where so much of the flavor is. I love this meal because it was actually something that I made during a pantry challenge because there are so few ingredients. You have butter, you have garlic, you have chicken, and you are good to go. And this tastes like restaurant worthy. Like, it's so delicious and flavorful, and I will definitely make it time and time again. Next up, we have chicken and dumplings from Betty Crocker. I actually made this during an extreme grocery budget challenge, and it was absolutely wonderful. I utilized baking mix, which made it super easy. You need 1 cup of mixed frozen vegetables, 1.5 cups of milk, and 1 can of condensed cream of chicken soup. Add in 1 cup of chicken and heat to a boil over high heat, then reduce down to a simmer. While that's simmering, take 1 cup of baking mix and 1/3 a cup of milk and mix that together, and you're going to kind of get this like lumpy mixture, and those are going to be your dumplings. And at that point, you want to add the dumplings to the soup. You want to add about 8 of them, so kind of divide it up into 8. I think I ended up adding more because at first I kind of grabbed small ones. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. You want to simmer this at low heat for 10 minutes and then cover it and cook it for another 8 to 12 minutes until your dumplings are fully cooked through. At the end, you can sprinkle a little bit of paprika over the top for color and flavoring, and this ended up being absolutely delicious. The only thing I would say is I was kind of expecting leftovers, but when this recipe says it's for 4 people, it absolutely is for 4 people. There were no leftovers. I was happy to add this to my favorites list because I still remembered it even 10 months later after making it, how delicious it was, and I'm going to have to put it on the rotation again. Now, this next recipe is on my list of family favorites. I keep a list of all of the recipes that we've tried, and when we sit down to dinner, we say, oh, this is so delicious, and it was something easy and repeatable. I put it on my list of family favorites. Not necessarily my budget family favorites that I posted, but this is a different family favorite list that includes everything, and this is a budget meal, so maybe it should have been on there, but this is one of my husband and myself, one of our favorites. This recipe is called Quick Ramen Noodle Stir Fry, and it calls for 1 cup of diced sweet onion. So I'm just putting an entire onion in, which I know is probably a little bit more than 1 cup, but the onion in this is so delicious, so I'm not afraid to use it. Now, you ever feel like you're easily influenced in the kitchen? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it said that if you're not chopping your own garlic, that you're I don't know, failing in some sort of way. So I was like, you know what? I need to chop my own garlic today. I'm not using that garlic press. I don't need what do they call it? Like a single source or a single use kitchen item. They're just like, just use your chef knife. Come on, it doesn't take that long. So yeah, I was influenced and I was like, okay, I'm going to cut my own minced garlic up today. So today I'm slicing up 3 cloves of garlic, or I think they're 4 small ones, and a couple of green onions, and you're going to thinly slice those as well. In the meantime, I am boiling a large pot of water, and I'm going to cook 2 packages of ramen noodles until tender, about 3 to 4 minutes, and then I'm going to rinse them with cold water and drain well. I'm just going to set those aside. We're going to mix our sauce together by adding 1/3 cup of beef stock to 1/4 cup of oyster sauce with 1 tablespoon of rice wine and vinegar and 1 teaspoon of sriracha, more or less to taste, your choice. I was serving this to the whole family, so I went a little bit light today. And then you just want to mix that up really well, and we'll set that aside because we're going to use it a little bit later. You want to heat a tablespoon of toasted sesame oil over medium heat in either a large skillet or a wok like I am. I'm adding my onion, all my chopped onion, and 1 pound of ground beef, and I am sure that you could use ground turkey in this and it would taste absolutely delicious. You want to cook that until your beef is brown, about 3 to 5 minutes, and making sure that all of that beef is crumbled up. Then you want to remove all of the excess fat from this, because at the end of cooking it, it's going to be kind of fatty depending on your percentages, so make sure to pour all of that out. At this point, you want to add in 3 cloves of minced garlic, the minced garlic that I already broke up. And then if you have it, you can add a tablespoon of freshly grated ginger. Fresh ginger, for some reason, is something I rarely have on hand, so I just use some ground ginger all the times that I've made it, and it always has turned out great. So that's a substitute that you can make. In this, I think you could also substitute onion powder or garlic powder if you don't have the fresh onion or garlic, even though both of those are very inexpensive ingredients. After a minute of cooking that all together, you want to add in your sauce, your beef stock mixture, and make sure to scrape up any brown bits from the bottom of your skillet. You want to stir in your ramen noodles until everything is evenly heated through and everything is coated in sauce. Then your dinner is ready. So just make sure everything is mixed and you are ready to go. You then want to top this with those chopped scallions, and that's it. That is your meal. This is so good. My kids love it. My husband loves it. It's a huge winner in our house every single time. So if you're ever like, okay, I have ground beef, but I am just sick of meatballs or meat sauce and spaghetti, and I don't want to make burgers. I don't have burger buns, but I have these things of ramen noodles sitting around. You can absolutely make this recipe. It is super simple and super delicious. So I 100% recommend it.
What do you got?
Swirl them up, like suck them. Suck them, remember? Suck them.
Next up is garlic butter rice. You can see how pretty is this rice, but also it is so cheap and so delicious, so easy to make. You are most likely going to have what you need to make this already on hand. You need 6 to 8 cloves of garlic, some vegetable oil, some minced garlic, so basically garlic, butter, white rice, and chicken broth. And then those scallions on top, I mean, if you have them, they're great. They're so cheap, but they're totally optional. You want to start off by slicing those 6 to 8 cloves of garlic very thinly. Now, garlic is so inexpensive. Do yourself a favor and buy yourself a head of garlic every now and then. If you're really, really tight or you only have garlic powder that day, I still think you could get away with doing this recipe with garlic powder. It's all about the butter and the rice, really. Add that garlic powder in and it's still going to be delicious. So I'll show you where you can add that garlic powder when the time is right. We're making this garlic because we're going to actually end up making like a crispy garlic chip. These garlic chips are so easy to make and they're a great addition to this rice, but also really anything else. Like now that I know how to make them so easily, I will probably make them for other things or just top even just a plain white rice with them, or you can put them over a little bit of chicken, but they are so delicious and so simple and budget friendly as always. So this part is really the only chopping you're going to need to do for this recipe. I just took a couple of scallions and sliced those up as well. Like I said, those are optional. If you have them, definitely use them. You're gonna need 2 to 3 tablespoons of some sort of fat. I'm just using an olive oil, but whatever you have on hand will do. And you wanna heat that over medium-high heat in a saucepan. I'm adding the garlic slices once everything is warmed up, and we're gonna saute those, moving them constantly until they're golden and crisp. So we're almost making like a potato chip, but it's a garlic chip. It doesn't take very long, so just watch those really carefully. They're gonna cook very fast. Once they get a little bit brown, then you know that they're done. Once they're done, you're gonna transfer them to a paper towel, basically to drain off the oil. You want to pour out any excess oil from the pan and then return it to your medium heat. You want to add 2 tablespoons of butter and melt that. And then once that is melted or melted-ish, as you can see, you want to add 2.5 teaspoons of minced garlic. And this is where if you hadn't made those garlic chips, you can go ahead and add maybe a tablespoon or a teaspoon or, however much garlic you like. I feel like garlic powder is very flexible when it comes to garlic powder. Like you can add more, you can add less depending on how much you enjoy. So you go ahead and take the reins on that one. And so if you're using our minced garlic though, you want to saute this for about 1.5 minutes until your garlic starts to turn like a light golden brown and the butter is well infused, because we're basically making a garlic butter. Then you want to add in 1.5 cups of rice. Now you can rinse this rice if you want to ahead of time. I know there's like a strong debate on the internet here over whether you should rinse the rice or not rinse the rice. You can see I'm pouring mine straight from my container. I've never really had a problem with this, but go ahead and do you. You want to stir this around and coat it in the garlic butter. And then we're going to add in 2.5 cups of chicken broth or chicken bouillon. And I really feel like if you are on the cheap here and you don't have either of those things, you could just use some salted water and I still think it would turn out pretty well. It's all about the garlic flavor and the butter flavor here. So even garlic powder and butter, I think will do it for you. Place a lid on your saucepan and bring that to a boil. Then you want to turn the heat down to medium-low and cook for 12 to 15 minutes. At this point, all of the liquid should be absorbed from the rice, and you can double check to make sure that that's happened. I feel like you know when you have those like little holes in the rice that it's perfectly cooked. You can transfer this to a serving bowl if you like, but I was serving mine right in my pot because it's just our family tonight. Add 2 tablespoons of butter and melt that right into your rice. You want to top this with your crispy garlic and your scallions, and it is just so pretty. This is always a huge hit. I've made this for my extended family before, and they were so impressed. Like, this is gourmet rice. This is amazing. I'm like, this is the cheapest, easiest rice ever. Everybody should make it. It is such a winner. All right, this next meal is a little bit heartier. It is a cheeseburger skillet casserole, and you want to start with a pound of ground beef or ground turkey, and we're going to start cooking our macaroni and cheese at the same time as well. All of these are awesome. They just start with the basic macaroni and cheese recipe, and then you add stuff to it. So I'm cooking up a pound of ground beef with, it's probably about 1/4 cup of onions. You could do a whole onion if you have one. I happened to be out this specific day, so I was cutting up the last of my onions and needed to get to the store. You just want to brown that ground beef until everything's fully cooked, and at the same time you can cook your pasta. At this point, add in 1 16-ounce container of frozen mixed vegetables, 1/3 cup of ketchup, 1/4 cup of water, 1/2 teaspoon of prepared mustard, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. Mix well to combine, and then let that simmer for about 10 minutes until your vegetables are fully cooked through. After 10 minutes, add in your fully mixed and ready macaroni and cheese and about 3/4 cup of shredded cheddar. Mix everything well until well combined and you have your cheeseburger skillet. This was absolutely delicious. My husband later said, he was like, it reminded me of something. It kind of reminded me of Burger King. And I was like, that's because it had ketchup and mustard in it. It was an actual cheeseburger skillet. And he didn't realize that. So I think that the flavors came through when it comes to like, it's a cheeseburger in a pasta. Anyway, it was quite good, and it was a great thing to feed a family really quickly and make sure that they get a little bit of everything, but also you have that like kid factor of the macaroni and cheese, which makes everybody happy. Next up, I'm making 3-bean salad. Now this is a favorite from when I was little, and you know the recipe is good when you had to ask your mom for a photo of it. And I have this printout that I keep, which is an awesome picture from the recipe book. I think handwritten is also really nice, and that's how you know that this is like a time-tested recipe. I'm going to start off by slicing 1 medium onion. I thought my onion was a little bit on the larger side, and I did decide to double the recipe, but I didn't necessarily want to completely double the onion because it's just a lot of onion for me. So it kind of depends on your taste. If you're fully doubling it, go ahead and put 2 onions in if you love onion. Otherwise, just stick with a medium to large one, and I think you'll be all set. Now, with buying an onion, buying wax beans, green beans, and kidney beans, and doubling the recipe, this recipe comes to about $7.23. But if you're making a single version of the recipe, it's $3.61. And here's the real deal, guys. I thought that I was going to need so much more than I did, and I actually ended up having to throw some away in the end. So I would really recommend just doing a single serving of this recipe for $3.61, and you're going to be in so much better shape. You do not need that double recipe at all. Good news is you may already have some of these canned beans on hand anyway. So like I said, we're using 2 cans of kidney beans, 2 cans of wax beans, and 2 cans of cut green beans, and you want to drain out all of those. I think if you do not have a fresh onion, that you could totally swap out for onion powder in this situation. And I'm cutting up some fresh parsley because I did have it on hand, but I didn't include that part in the price. You can go ahead and use dried parsley if you have it, or I believe my mom said she always just omitted it because she's just not a huge parsley fan. Now I'm also assuming you have some sugar, vinegar, and oil on hand. I'm going to use 1/2 cup of sugar to double this recipe, along with 1 cup of white wine vinegar and 1 cup of salad oil. So you really want to go with an oil that doesn't have a strong flavor. For spices, I'm adding a teaspoon of basil, and the recipe does call for a teaspoon of dried tarragon, but I didn't have any, so I didn't add it, and it still tasted great. Mix well, add in all of your beans, and then if you can, let this sit overnight. So I started this the night before our big barbecue, and it really lets those flavors marinate. If you don't have the full overnight period, I think 10 to 12 hours would be ideal if you can try and do it early in the morning. The less time, the less the marinade's gonna sit and the less flavor there will be. So I'm just recommending more time, so just think ahead on this one. Now, this recipe is not only a personal favorite, but it is now a favorite of all my friends, especially my girlfriends. They were totally swooning over this. They thought it was the best thing that they've ever had. They loved that sweet and tangy flavor, and they all wanted the recipe. So this is going to be a great budget meal to really wow your friends with. And like I said, even though I made double the recipe, I actually ended up having to throw some away, even though people thought it was the best ever. So I would just do half that recipe. So for $3.61, you are going to get a ton of bang for your buck on this one. There are going to be plenty more recipes, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for your continued support over the past year. We're about to hit 50,000 subscribers. And if you are new here, I do hope that you will subscribe to the channel so that you can see all of the wonderful 2023 recipes as well. This next recipe is for a crispy baked cornflake chicken. And this is one of those recipes that I picked out to make, and I was chomping at the bit, ready to go and make this recipe. I was so excited. You want to start with a 9x13 pan and just put a couple tablespoons of melted butter in the bottom of it. This is key, guys. If you have butter, please use it. If you don't, you can use an oil or a spray, but that butter really does a lot for this, so I would recommend it. Then you're going to need 3/4 cup of either fresh eggs or egg substitute. For some reason, the recipe recommends egg substitute, but I ended up using fresh eggs because that is what I had on hand. Now in a separate bowl, I'm going to crush up some cornflakes. I just bought a box of cornflakes and I'm just crushing them by hand. You could put them into like a Ziploc bag and smash them like that, whatever your favorite way to do this is. I liked the by hand method or the bag method because you are going to end up with some kind of larger pieces, and that way you really know that it's a cornflake. You do want to get it pretty crumbly, but the bigger the pieces that are kind of in there like here and there, the more fun it is, or at least I kind of like that on the chicken. So personal opinion, you want to leave a couple of bigger pieces in there. And then to that you want to add in 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and then a teaspoon and a half or so, or whatever you like, of your favorite seasoned salt. I'm using like a Lowry seasoned salt, and that was delicious. And you just want to mix all that together because we are going to dip our chicken in that. I love this recipe because it is so few ingredients. You just added 3 ingredients to that dry mix, and then we're going to use our egg and our chicken, and that is it. So easy. Dip your chicken in your egg or egg substitute mix and then dredge it inside of that dry mix, and that is coating your cornflake chicken. It's that easy. Now, I don't know, you could use a fork or you could try and use tongs. I feel like I've been there before and I've tried to not use my hands on something like this, but it's basically impossible. I feel like if you don't get that like thick coating of dredge on your fingers where you have like these I don't know, like flour fingers, then maybe you're not doing it right. I don't know. If you guys have better ideas on how to avoid that, I am totally down. Maybe I should use gloves. I'm not sure. But, sometimes I make sure to wash my hands, and then I'm just going in for it, because sometimes you just really need to touch the food to know that it's going to be, make it yours. And the recipe actually calls for 4 drumsticks and 4 thighs. So if you have that, you can absolutely do it that way. I, again, had all drumsticks, but that's what I'm going to use. And it says to put everything in a 13x9 pan. And I tried that and I felt like I was feeling like they were too close together, honestly. And I know that when I bake something in the oven, especially like this, I really want the outside to get crispy. And the closer together that they are, the more the juices are going to run into each other and the softer the sides are going to be. So I did end up changing up and bringing out, like, I just used like a cake pan to put 4 of my chicken drumsticks in, and I felt like the spacing was a lot better then. So I do recommend that if you feel like things are too close together, just grab another pan and throw your chicken in there, and then that way they're going to bake a little bit spaced out, and I think that the edges end up being crispier. So you do want to bake this at 425 degrees for 20 minutes, and then you want to go in and flip over your chicken, and you can see how the chicken that was sitting in the bottom of the pan has this nice golden crispy glow to it. So we're going to make sure that we get that going on all sides of our drumsticks today. I'm going to put this back in the oven and bake it for another 15 minutes until the inside reaches 170 to 175 degrees. And this is amazing because it tastes like a fried chicken. The flavor is there, but it is so light. No deep frying for me. All right, guys, it is turkey burger time. I am so excited to share these with you because they were absolutely phenomenal. Usually I would be a little nervous to feed my family a turkey burger, but these burgers had thousands of 5-star reviews. But they were also from a publication that tends to hide its recipes behind a paywall. So I'm going to put the recipe down in the description box for you. It is a similar recipe to the one that I used so that you can see it no problem. You don't have to click and get routed back to the main page. You want to mix together 1 pound of ground turkey, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of ketchup, 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Then you want to grate in about half a medium onion. Use a fork to mix that together well. Maybe I should do like a whole show on one-handed cooking as I watch myself with the one hand trying to mix that. Make sure to like this video and comment below if you're interested in one-handed cooking. Now, wouldn't it have been funny if I actually shaped the burgers with one hand? Yeah, that's not gonna happen. So you do wanna shape these into 4 evenly sized patties. I think I did mine a little bit smaller on some and larger on the others just because my kids are gonna eat smaller ones, but however you need to do it in your household, it should make about 4. Now to cook these patties, you want to heat a tablespoon of a neutral oil over medium-high heat in a nonstick pan. And then we're going to cook each of the patties for about 5 minutes on each side. This timing is perfect. They were perfectly cooked through, but not too much, and they were so juicy and delicious. I'm using this splatter guard to make sure that the grease doesn't go absolutely everywhere, and I recommend one if you do not have one already. I will make sure to link one down in the description box below. You can top these with your favorite cheese or no cheese. You can see in my family, we have 3 cheese lovers. My husband's actually gonna have feta cheese on his because he loves feta cheese. And Julian and I are gonna have cheddar, and Tommy is a no-go on the cheese on his burger. Either way, all 3 of these options are absolutely delicious. Then you wanna serve these on your favorite hamburger buns. I've been actually making an amazing bun with a sourdough discard. And if you are a sourdough person, I'm gonna put that recipe down in the description box below for you because you want to try it. Next up, we're gonna make a tuna melt. A tuna melt is such a budget-friendly meal. I'm just gonna make a couple of them, so I'm using 1 can of tuna, but if you wanna make 4 or 6, just double that or triple that recipe. At its core, a tuna melt is so inexpensive. A can of tuna at Walmart is 78 cents. A loaf of sandwich bread is 93 cents. You can get sliced cheese for $2.22 and mayo for $2.28. But when you break that down per serving on what you're actually using to make this basic tuna melt, your total is 97 cents per sandwich, which is so inexpensive. I am sprucing mine up today based on what I have around the house, and I'm making what is called the ultimate tuna melt. You can use a little bit of celery if you have that. If you don't have that, that's absolutely fine. And then I'm cutting up some fresh parsley, but dried parsley will do as well. You can use minced red onion, yellow onion, Vidalia onion, or onion powder and add that right into your salad. I really like to mince my onion pretty small in a salad like this, but if you're an onion lover and you like bigger chunks, go ahead and cut that. Always make sure that you do things the way that you like it. In the end, you're the person eating it, not the person who wrote the recipe. Then you want to add in some mayonnaise. I'm adding a couple tablespoons to start and a little squeeze of Dijon mustard with a little bit of salt. Everything except the mayonnaise is totally optional. Hopefully you do have a little salt on hand. You can sprinkle that on your salad if you're only doing a plain mayonnaise tuna salad. I'm gonna mix everything around and see how you're feeling about your mayonnaise content. I did end up adding a little bit more because I like a little bit more mayonnaise in my salad. As we head into the summer season, tomatoes are going to become more plentiful and less expensive and just more delicious overall. So if you have a tomato on hand, go ahead and add that to your tuna melt. It really does add a lot. It is not necessary to make a basic tuna melt, but if you have a tomato or you know somebody who has a garden or you can grow your own tomato plant, even if it's just on a patio, you are going to be so thankful. Now, as I said, a tuna melt is delicious enough on a plain wheat or white bread. I happened to make my own sourdough bread and it was fresh out of the oven that day. I will put a nice sourdough video and recipe down below for you guys if you've been wanting to make your own sourdough. It is so satisfying, so delicious, and really a huge budget item because you're making that out of nothing. You're making your whole starter out of just flour, and baking the bread also is just flour and water and a little bit of salt. So it's wild how amazing making your own bread is. Just want to top the bread with half of the tuna mixture, and then we'll cover that with tomato and some cheese. I'm just using a cheddar cheese, but you can use whatever you have on hand. There's also the option to put cheese below the tuna and on top of the tuna, which is, I'm sure, delicious, but that's a lot of cheese for me, so I opted to just do it on one side. Now I'm putting a little bit of butter on the top of my bread because I am going to cook these in a pan today, but you also have the option to just cook this in the oven, and if you don't have butter or oil or anything like that on hand, you can just put it on a pan and put it in the oven, and it will still get a nice, delicious melted cheese on it, and it will still taste really good. Over medium heat, you want to cook these for about 2 to 3 minutes until the cheese starts to melt and everything's getting golden brown, and then flip them over to the other side and cook until the cheese is really fully melted and that side is also golden brown. I had a friend over this particular day and we had debated going out for lunch and just grabbing McDonald's or something quick and easy with the kids. And then I said, stay home and I'll make something. And this was 1,000,000 times better than what we would have had we gone out. So we saved money and we got to have an amazing meal. This next recipe is for a marinated grilled chicken burger, and I enjoyed this so much. The whole family loved it. They loved it so much that they asked to take it on vacation with us on our upcoming vacation. So that's how I know that this is a huge win, and this is so simple. I'm just going to marinate our chicken. We're going to use some chicken breast to make a chicken burger with 1 cup of oil, a half a cup of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika, a teaspoon of chili powder, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of onion powder. And then you can either do a fresh crushed clove of garlic, or I had this like garlic grinder that I decided to use because I was out of fresh garlic. You could also add a little bit more garlic powder too, so whatever you have on hand, go ahead and use that. Mix that all together, and this makes an absolutely amazing marinade. This grilled chicken, once it came out, was so delicious. So again, I have pulled some chicken out of the freezer. I gave you some prices on chicken earlier. This is again chicken breast, and to make 4 of these, you really need just about a pound. You're gonna slice them pretty thin because we're gonna put them on a burger with a burger bun. We're gonna get plenty of items on top of that, so you don't really need like a huge chicken breast, plus that would take forever to cook. So I'm slicing my chicken breasts in half, and I happen to have 3. We're gonna cook a little bit extra tonight. Just want to make sure that they are submerged in that marinade. We're gonna cover them up and refrigerate them in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes. Now the beautiful thing about a sandwich like this, or a chicken burger as they're calling it, is that you can put whatever you have on hand on top of it. You can make it your own. So I happen to have a half of an avocado, and I'm gonna slice that up. I have half of a tomato. I have some cheddar cheese. So we're just gonna use those things to top our little chicken burgers with. And in my family, it's like everyone wants something different. Julian, my 4-year-old, loves the avocado. I like that too. My husband is more of like a just cheese and sauce guy. And my son, Tommy, who's 6, is all about the ketchup, just ketchup and plain chicken. And that's all he wants. But because I am always down to try new things and I want new ideas, I would love you guys to tell me down in the comments below what your favorite toppings are, your most innovative toppings, or the weirdest thing maybe you've even put on top of something like a grilled chicken sandwich. Now you want to grill these over high heat for 6 to 8 minutes on each side. But if you don't have a grill or a griddle or something like that, you can go ahead and put these in the oven and cook them the same way that we did with the pesto chicken at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. At its core, 4 of these chicken sandwiches with cheese and just cheese and chicken and burger buns is going to run you $4.58. And then you can add whatever you want on the top. Next up, we are cooking with tomato soup. This is a favorite from Tomato Soup Recipes. This is called chicken tinga filling, and you can make it with a flatbread, like pizza type thing, or you can make it in a taco. That's what I did. There's so many different options, so that's why I absolutely love it. You want to start with a tablespoon of vegetable oil or whatever your favorite oil is in a skillet over medium-high heat. Very similar to all of the other recipes. Must be something about tomato soup that's like that. The recipe says to use 2 cups of chopped onion. I'm going to make about half the recipe, and I just had like half an onion left around, so that's what I used. It was probably less than a cup of onion, but still tasted good. As always, if you don't have an onion like this, you can use like scallions, or you can use onion powder, and I think that would taste great in a recipe like this. Cook the onions for a couple of minutes, and then you want to add in about a pound of boneless, skinless chicken breast tenders. Add in a 1/4 cup of water, 1 can of condensed tomato soup, and then 2 canned chipotle peppers in adobo, and mine were frozen, so I defrosted them, and then I did not go about it in a very fancy, reasonable way. I just like chopped them up kind of in the container that I defrosted them in with a chef knife, which is ridiculous, but it worked and everything tasted great. So it was just in the essence of time. I was like running somewhere and I'm like, I need to get this done. You know, you comment below if you have some ridiculous things that you've done that you did in a rush when you were trying to cook. You want to let this cook for 15 minutes until your chicken is done, and then you just want to take 2 forks and shred it up, and it shreds up perfectly. And if you can remember, this was very simple. We're just adding tomato soup, water, and chipotle in adobo. You can add some salt and pepper to this to season it to your taste, and that is it. This is phenomenal, like such an easy, phenomenal filling. You can just buy whatever chicken you got on sale. I mean, I'm using chicken tenders, but you could definitely use some sliced up breasts or some boneless, skinless thighs. Shred those up, but this sauce, the flavor is absolutely amazing. So at first I thought I was going to serve these on flatbreads. I was going to a friend's house, and then I changed my mind last minute and decided to do tacos, but I still made the lime crema that goes with the flatbreads and then put that on the tacos. So you just need 2/3 a cup of sour cream, or actually used Greek yogurt in my case because that's what I had in the fridge, a half a teaspoon of chili powder, and 1 teaspoon of lime juice. And you can just mix that together, or if you have like a fresh lime, you can use actually a teaspoon of grated lime zest. Either one will work great. This was the perfect little cream to put over my tacos, and everybody absolutely loved these. I toasted up some corn tortillas on the stove, added my chicken tinga filling, then some queso fresco, my crema, some cilantro and red onion, but really you can add whatever you like on your tacos to these because they were absolutely fantastic and such an easy filling. I would try this filling with flatbread next time too. That looks amazing, and you could probably just put it over rice and it would be good as well. For this next recipe, I'm going to make some Greek chicken kebabs. So I'm going to use those boneless chicken thighs again, but you could also use some boneless, skinless chicken breast and just cut them up into strips. I'm going to marinate this in a simple Greek dressing from Ken's, and I usually buy this on sale for about $2, and I'm going to use about half of the container, so it's about $1 worth of dressing, or you could alternatively make your own Greek marinade, and I will put a recipe for that down below. But for me, this is a quick, simple summer meal, and it is so, so good with this Greek dressing. I'm just going to put this in the refrigerator with a cover on it for up to 24 hours, but you can just do a couple hours and it still tastes great. And a meal like this is the perfect opportunity for me to have some peppers, which I do love, and my husband can avoid in this, and it's not going to make anything taste like peppers. So I have a red pepper, a yellow pepper, a zucchini. You can make kebabs out of absolutely any vegetable that you love that you want to put on the grill. These are just the ones that I chose. Some summer squash is also a good option. Eggplant is also great. Really, whatever you have on hand, especially in the summer months, these things are more abundant and you can get them at like a farm stand. Sometimes I see farms on the side of the road that someone's selling them for like 25 cents. So it's almost too inexpensive not to buy and throw in a kebab and get something healthy and fresh. Now I'm going to use some of this Greek dressing and actually marinate these as well. So once I have them all finished, I'm just going to put them in a 9x13 and pour some of that over there. And you can let these sit at the exact same time that you let your chicken sit. And it just gives them a little bit of flavor. I don't know how much it, gets inside of the vegetables, but I think that the flavor is delicious. Now I'm just going to take my chicken pieces and skewer them. I find that even though maybe it's pretty to put the chicken and the vegetables on the same skewer, it cooks a lot better to cook those things separately because they're going to cook at different times, at different speeds, and the vegetables actually sometimes take longer than a small piece of chicken like this, and so you'll end up undercooking your vegetables or overcooking your chicken, so it's better to just keep those things separate so that you can cook them at the right time.
This is a family favorite in that even my in-laws request it when we go on vacation together every year. It's one of the meals that I make out of the few that I do and they do, and we kind of switch off. But they remember it and they love it, and it's great because kids like it and adults like it. And you just want to cook this on the grill on high heat for about 5 minutes on each side, but you do want to make sure that that chicken is cooked all the way through, so always make sure to check that your juices are running clear and it's cooked all the way through. I do find that the vegetables often take a little bit longer, so you may want to do those 6 or 7 minutes on each side. You can see I'm kind of like grabbing it to make sure that it's cooked, and I'm going to place those on a plate and we are going to enjoy. I do also like to serve this with the garlic butter rice from my rice video, and I will put that rice video down below for you in the description box if you want to check out some different rice recipes. The rice recipe is also a hit with the in-laws, and my sister-in-law is like, it's life-changing, it's so good. So in this particular night, I did not make that rice because I was just going quick and easy, and I just had some fresh bread that I had pulled out of the oven. I was like, that's going to be our starch today. But on other nights, especially if it's like a colder night or something, I may make rice inside and do that garlic butter rice that is absolutely fantastic. You can also see that I made a ton of chicken because this is an amazing meal prep. This is a great thing to put in meal prep boxes for the week for lunch because there's so much chicken and vegetables and it reheats really well. If you don't have a grill, this actually ends up being a great sheet pan meal. So you can actually mix together all those sliced pieces of chicken and your vegetables, put them on a sheet pan and bake them at about 400 degrees for 25 minutes. For this next recipe, I'm making grilled chicken tenders and grilled sweet potatoes. This would also be a really good sheet pan meal. To make your chicken tender marinade, add a 1/4 cup of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, 1 clove of grated or minced garlic, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Mix all that together, and then you can add in about a pound or more of chicken tenders. And if chicken tenders tend to be on the more expensive side, so you can actually take a chicken breast and slice it lengthwise to make almost like a faux chicken tender, and that still works out really well and it's super delicious. The good thing about having smaller pieces like this is that the marinade covers and coats more pieces of the chicken. So if you put like a full chicken breast in here, it would be harder for the marinade to penetrate the inside of the chicken. You want to place those in the refrigerator and marinate for at least 20 minutes or up to 8 hours. And then I have an entire 3-pound bag of sweet potatoes, and I was like, you know what, we're just gonna cook all of these up because they are good for the kids, good for the baby, they're great for the week. So I wanted to have leftovers and extras. And sweet potatoes are so inexpensive. This whole bag was $2.79, and that was plenty of sweet potatoes for more than one day. Then you just want to cut your sweet potatoes into 1/4-inch wedges, and we are going to coat the slices with olive oil and a little sprinkle of salt. Next, you want to make a cilantro lime dressing to put over the sweet potatoes once they're grilled, and this is phenomenal. You want a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil or whatever oil you have, a tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm just using that cheap stuff from the Dollar Tree, or you can use fresh if you have it, and then a 1/4 cup of finely chopped fresh cilantro. Cilantro is so inexpensive, but I think you could also use some dried cilantro if that is all you have. It's still going to make a great dressing, a great flavor for these sweet potatoes. You just want to grill the sweet potatoes over high heat for about 3 to 6 minutes on each side. Kind of depends on the hot spots on your grill or how hot your grill is. These would also be amazing in the oven at about 425 degrees for 20 minutes, and you just want to flip them halfway through. Depending on how many potatoes you're cooking, you may want to cook the chicken at the same time, or you can add it once most of your potatoes are cooked. You can see I've taken plenty of them off at this point, and then I added in the chicken. You also want to cook that chicken over high heat for about 3 to 4 minutes on each side. It cooks really quick. And once your sweet potatoes are all cooked, you just want to add them to a bowl and then pour that dressing right over the top. I'm telling you, this is phenomenal. It's not something I ever thought to do until I had tried this recipe, but now I am completely hooked, and this is a summer favorite of ours. I am so psyched on it. If you do want to cook those chicken tenders in a different way, they would be great pan seared for about 5 minutes on each side, and they would get a nice crust on them, and they're going to taste phenomenal.
This was our dinner that night. I did make up a couple hot dogs because I think for some reason I had promised the kids hot dogs, but the chicken and the hot dogs and the sweet potatoes were great. And then I just did a can of corn on the stove, which is always a family favorite of ours and is so inexpensive at like 72 cents a can. Always a fan favorite. And next up we have ranch Parmesan dinner rolls. So the recipe calls for 2 like loaves of bread frozen, and then you kind of break it up, which I was not able to find frozen bread dough, but I did find these Rhodes rolls. So I'm following the instructions on the back of the package, and I just put them in a 9x13 pan to rise in the refrigerator overnight. And then the next day I set them on the counter to rise for another hour. And in the meantime, I'm making the mix that I'm going to put on top of them. So I'm using a melted half a cup of butter with 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese and 1 envelope of the buttermilk ranch salad dressing, which is 3 tablespoons. And you want to mix all of that together really well. And the recipe has you rolling the rolls right into that mixture. Now, my rolls at this point were too puffy and I didn't want to deflate them basically. So I just decided to spread the mixture right over the top of the rolls. And then I put sprinkled a little bit of minced onion. So you want 1 small onion, finely chopped. I probably used quite a bit less than that. And then just sprinkle that over the top of the rolls. And then you want to cook them in an oven at 350 degrees until golden brown for 20 to 25 minutes. Mine was closer to 25 minutes just to make sure that they were fully cooked all the way through. But they were a huge winner. I made this for my stepmom's birthday and she was like, I need the recipe. These rolls are phenomenal. These are amazing. I need to know more about them. And I'm like, you'd be surprised. They're frozen dinner rolls. I've never worked with the Rhodes rolls before, so I loved it. I thought this was a great way to use ranch seasoning. And like I said, with the ranch, you don't have to use any other seasonings because it has everything in it and it makes it super, super easy. I think if you have like a great dinner roll recipe, this will work with anything. You could probably even buy like those take and bake rolls and do it that way. The next thing I'm going to make is barbecue chicken sliders because it doesn't get any easier than that or tasty than that. I'm just going to place about 1 pound of chicken tenders that I had bought on sale and put those right inside my crock pot, and then about 1 cup of barbecue sauce right on top here. And I'm going to cook that on low for about 3 to 4 hours. Especially with the chicken tenders, you just want to watch them. But because these were frozen, they did take a little bit longer. I think it was closer to 4 hours because you really don't want it to dry out, but the crock pot will just cook this for you. Like, it's amazing. It is so easy. So I recommend you just find some freezer chicken that you have around, and this is going to be the perfect way to make your sliders. Or you can buy fresh chicken. Right now, I think at Walmart, we're running like $2.98 a pound, which is still pretty inexpensive. You can see even with 1 fork, this chicken shreds so incredibly easily. Now, for grabbing rolls, I recommend Aldi. These Sweet Hawaiian rolls from Aldi were $2.09 on Instacart, and usually that's like an upcharge, so it's even cheaper. And at Walmart, the cheapest I can find is like $3.24. So a lot cheaper at Aldi to get those Hawaiian rolls. So this recipe, you can go crazy and put more stuff on it, or you can just go super easy and put less. So for me, I've heated my oven to 350 degrees, and I am slicing those Hawaiian rolls in half. And then we're going to place the barbecue chicken over the top of them, just an even layer. And I did have some Colby Jack cheese on hand, so I decided to put that on the top there. But if you don't have fresh cheese, you don't even have to use cheese with them. Like, they're going to be good without it. And then there's also the option of making up like a little coleslaw, like I talked about earlier, $1.98 or maybe 99 cents for that coleslaw mix. And just use some mayonnaise and whatnot you have on hand and make some coleslaw. And that's also really good on top of these. So there are so many options. Now, my favorite way to make something that is not necessarily fancy or extremely flavorful, I mean, it already is without it, but it's going to be even better and it's going to make it taste amazing, is to put some butter or some olive oil right over the top of your rolls, as well as some salt, some garlic powder, onion powder, and some Italian seasoning. And that flavor, it's basically like making a garlic bread right on top of your sliders. And wow, it is so good. And you just... like, why wouldn't you do it? You know, just take whatever you have on hand. So I just took those. I put them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 5 minutes. You can see how melty that cheese gets and how the top of those buns are browned. These are absolutely fabulous. Just go ahead and throw the buns right back on top. You can slice these into 12 pieces. The serving size is about 2, although I ate 3 of them for lunch this particular day, and the whole family loved it. I was like, okay, this is not only a potluck recipe, but this is also a good dinner recipe for us, or a lunch recipe, because it was just, they're so fabulous. We loved them. So super easy, super inexpensive. Sometimes you just have to grab the rolls and you can use everything else you have on hand, and it's so great. In total, if you do need to buy all the things for this recipe, it comes in at $5.34, and that's assuming no cheese, and you just go very bare bones with the barbecue chicken. But for 6 people, that's going to be 89 cents a serving, and it is so delicious.
Yeah.
What is it?
5 out of 5.
Can you show me? Take a big bite.
No. A 10 out of 10 is so like it.
The next recipe is simply named Poor Man's Meal. It is as easy as it gets, and it is super delicious. You want to start with 1 pound of ground beef or ground turkey, whatever you have. You can see my manager's special sticker on mine, so I got mine on sale, popped that in my freezer, and I was ready to go. Season your beef with salt, and then I'm using a Trader Joe's seasoning blend, but you can use whatever your favorite seasonal salt is. When the meat is cooked through thoroughly, remove it from the heat and set it aside in a separate dish. And then I'm going to use the same pan and add a few tablespoons of oil, whatever oil that you have on hand will do. And we are going to add in, it says 7 cups of frozen hash brown potatoes, but I had maybe like 2 cups of them in my freezer, and we were going to go real poor man style. So I decided we would just use what we had and just cut down on the potatoes, and I think it would be plenty of food for us anyway. So I just used the rest of what I had. You want to cook these until the potatoes are light and crispy, turning them halfway through for about 10 minutes so you can see they're getting that golden brown color on them. Once the potatoes are fully cooked to your liking, you can sprinkle a little more salt and pepper on if you'd like. Add your ground beef back to your skillet, as well as 1 drained can of corn. And that is the basis for this meal. We're going to saute this for a couple of minutes to make sure everything is warmed all the way through. And I topped mine with a little bit of shredded mozzarella cheese because that's what I had in my refrigerator, but you can use any type of cheese that you like or that you have. The recipe actually recommends cheddar, so if you have that, go ahead and use that. But the cheese on top really makes it extra special, and then I happen to have some scallions, so I cut those up and put those on there too. I think that if you had like a fresh onion when you first started cooking that beef, it would taste really good in this skillet as well. So you can see that working with what you have, those potatoes that I had only a couple of cups, still makes this a delicious and hearty meal. This was plenty for our family. We were so pleased. The kids loved it. Not that we even needed it, but I served it with some frozen peas and some Texas toast, and this was absolutely fabulous. And when I say that the kids loved it, Ben was a huge fan. He was just shoving it in his mouth. Don't mind our camping stuff behind him, but he loved it. Another 2022 favorite is pasta Caesar salad that I saw on TikTok, and it looked too good not to make. Now I'm using a leftover piece of a Parisian loaf that I had from the night before, and I recommend that if you have some leftover bread around, just go ahead and use that. I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy a crusty bread like the recipe said to, because that's kind of a waste of money. It's just use whatever you have lying around. I'm sure you have a few slices of bread, and then you just want to cube those up. At Walmart, you can get an entire loaf of bread for $1. So if you do need to buy bread, go in the direction like that. Don't buy the expensive artisanal bread, because then you're going to have leftover bread that you can use for something else, and you're using something very inexpensive for only $1, and you're actually going to have way more than you need. Then you just want to take your cubed bread and place it over about like half of a baking sheet, because on the other half of the baking sheet, we're actually going to bake our chickpeas. You want to drain, rinse, and pat dry, and you want to make sure that these are very dry, otherwise they're not going to roast nice and crispy. 1 can of chickpeas or garbanzos, whatever you want to call them. And then place these on the other half of your baking sheet. Drizzle your cubed bread and your chickpeas with a little bit of olive oil. You can just toss them after you drizzle it on. Then you want to season your croutons with salt, garlic powder, onion powder, and Italian seasoning. And the recipe just says to season with your heart, so that is what I did. You want to bake this in a preheated oven at 450 degrees for 10 minutes. In the meantime, I'm boiling my water and cooking my pasta according to the package directions. I'm using 8 ounces of farfalle. The original recipe had penne, so you can use whatever your favorite pasta is for this. I love the farfalle in it though. You make sure to salt your water too. And I'm going to cut up really small. We're going to mince up a 1/4 cup of red onion. Then you want to grab a medium to large size bowl, and I'm just taking 1 washed head of romaine lettuce and tearing that up. We're just going to use that whole head of lettuce. I love this recipe because lettuce can be a little bit more expensive, and comparatively pasta is much cheaper. And especially when you're cooking for a crowd, using pasta to kind of fill the void there and using less lettuce is amazing because you're actually saving a ton of money, but you're also providing something very interesting to people. Because I served this at a birthday party and everybody absolutely loved it, and they were so surprised and excited and intrigued to try something different that had lettuce and pasta in it. Then you can add the red onion right on top of the lettuce. And your timing should be just about perfect because it should be about 10 minutes. And at this point, we are going to take those croutons off of your baking sheet. And I actually, because I was serving this at a party later, I put mine right into a Tupperware container to save for later. But if you're going to eat this relatively soon, just put them off to the side on a plate so that they can cool down. And then you do want to put the rest of the chickpeas back in the oven for another 10 minutes of cooking. And once your pasta is done, go ahead and drain that, and then you can use some cold water to spray it off and cool it down right away, because you're going to want it to be cold in order to put into your salad and not warm, because you do not want warm pasta with lettuce. That would not be good. You can just pour those cold noodles right on top of your lettuce and mix everything around. Once that 10 minutes is up, allow your chickpeas to cool down, and then you can either store them in a Tupperware like I did, or you can add them right into your salad with your croutons. Once I arrived at the party, I just added my homemade croutons and my roasted chickpeas right to the salad. And there is a recipe in the original recipe that shows you how to make some Caesar dressing. I personally just went with a store-bought one. I poured as much, as it feels like is right over the top of it with some shredded Parmesan cheese. And this was the biggest hit of the party. I have to be honest. I have to toot my own horn here. Everybody absolutely loved it. They're like, "Who made this salad? This is so cool." So it's bound to be a hit, and it's so inexpensive and so delicious, and those chickpeas really make it. So it's a really fun thing to just use a can of chickpeas for, and some pasta that's already in your cabinet, and some bread that you need to use up anyway. So it is a great use up salad, pasta salad, barbecue side dish. Now this next fabulous dirt cheap dinner is a fish taco, and we are going to use an age-old budget favorite, fish sticks. You can get that huge package of 44 fish sticks for $3.44 at my local Walmart. I also grabbed an 8-ounce container of sour cream, and on hand I had some lime juice and a little bit of garlic powder and some cumin, and we're gonna actually just make up a sauce for our fish stick tacos while those fish sticks cook. You just want to cook the fish sticks according to the package directions and cook as many fish sticks as you want to make tacos. I feel like it is unlikely that you're going to want 44 tacos, but hey, if you're really hungry or you're a big family, you can make 44 of them and you still only spent $3.44, so it's a great deal. Then I grabbed some street tacos. These are smaller corn tortillas, and they were under $2 for the street tacos, and I think you could even get them for cheaper. I swear I've seen them sometimes for like 98 cents, so it depends on the brand or what they have in stock.
but very, very inexpensive. And I think 24 come in that package. So yes, you can make up to 24 tacos by only using half of your fish sticks and your entire package of street tacos. And you're going to be in great shape and spend next to nothing for something that is going to look so fancy. You're going to feel like you're eating at a restaurant, if not better. And as you just saw there, I just heated my tacos on a dry skillet over high heat and just flipped them quickly so that they got a little bit charred on each side and they got warm. And then to your tacos, you just want to add in one crispy cooked up fish stick. I ended up serving these at something I call wine lunch, which is where my mother and my grandmother and my aunt and my best friend all get together to have a great time, drink a little wine in the afternoon, and we all bring something. So my contribution on this particular day was these delicious fish tacos. Now I have one of those packages of $1.98 coleslaw, and I've added a little bit of chopped scallion to that. This is not 100% necessary, but hey, if you have it, or you can, especially if you can find it on sale for like 98 cents, which I have seen on clearance before, it is so delicious. So to those tacos, you've got your fish stick topped with a little bit of your coleslaw mix, and then that sour cream mix that I created earlier. And another thing you can add to that sour cream mix is a little bit of chili powder to give it a little bit of kick. In my case, I did not add that, but you totally could. And then I topped it with a little cilantro, a couple wedges of lime. But the great thing about tacos is you can make them out of whatever you have. So if you don't have the extra cash to add extra things to it, then don't do it. It's totally fine. You can see here all of the wonderful things that we had for our little wine lunch, part of our spread, and the tacos were a huge hit. Everybody was like, I can't believe you made these out of fish sticks. And I was like, yep. I think that, so many times we think that something needs to be expensive or extra, but really you can make something out of something that is so simple. You can see my grandmother here with Ben. That is her great grandson. Next, we're going to make a chicken sandwich with these bone-in chicken thighs that I got for 99 cents a pound. So it was $3.50 for 6 of these, which is such a deal, and I didn't even need all 6 of them. I'm actually going to take all the skin off and take the bones off. So you can buy boneless, skinless chicken thighs, but you are going to pay a premium. You're not going to get that 99 cents a pound rate. And there's also something to deboning it yourself. I think that when I generally get them at the store and they're already take the bone out, there's just not as much fat, flavor. They're smaller. I don't know what they do to them, but doing it yourself, there's just something about that. You want to peel all of the skin off and cut off, any real excess fat, and make sure not to throw that stuff away. That's going to make an excellent broth, or you can actually slice up those chicken skins. I like to cook mine up, actually fry it up and serve it with some potatoes and an egg over the top, and it's just fantastic, kind of as like a hash. To debone them, I'm not an expert at it, but you do want to kind of slice along the side of the bone to kind of get the meat off of there. And once you slice, there's almost like a tendon at the top of it, and once you slice through that, you should be able to kind of pull the chicken right off of the bone. And so I'm just cutting that off at the top there. You see, you can kind of see it on the right. Let me see if I can zoom in. But once I cut that, then I was able to just slide the chicken right down the bone and pull it off. So that was helpful. It's a little bit of a process. Hey, you know what? If you butcher your butchering process, not a big deal. Practice makes perfect, and it all tastes the same anyway. So to coat the chicken, you're going to want 100 milliliters, which I think is like a third of a cup of buttermilk, but luckily I had milliliters on my measuring cup, so no problem. Don't worry if you don't have buttermilk. You can just use regular milk and a squirt of lemon juice, and that should be fine. And 2 tablespoons of pickle juice. In a second bowl, add a half a cup of flour and a half a cup of cornmeal. Now from here on out, the marinade and the dredge have the exact same spices, so I added them at the same time. You want to add in 1 tablespoon of hot sauce, whatever your favorite is, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of white pepper, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of cayenne pepper if you want to use it. I did not, because I was making this for my whole family and they're very sensitive to that. 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika and 1 teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder.
and that's what he said was his secret ingredient. So it did give it a lot of flavor and adds a lot of salty umami type flavor to that. Mix both of those really well, and then I was supposed to marinate the chicken for 2 minutes to 2 hours inside of that marinade. Completely forgot to do that, and so I just put it right in there and put it right in the dredge and then cooked it. However, it was still phenomenal. I can't imagine how much even better it would have tasted if I had actually marinated it. So, hey, if you're running low on time, don't even worry about marinating it, because I promise you these taste so good. It's amazing flavor. And it's because we're using so many spices. And so far, I just picked up those chicken thighs and I didn't have to buy anything else. Everything else I have in my house, I have in my pantry. You want to heat some oil, about, a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of oil, and plop your chicken in there. You want to cook those for 3 to 4 minutes per side until golden and crispy, and make sure that chicken is cooked all the way through. But wow, I mean, I don't normally cook like this. Like, I don't normally fry chicken, but I might need to start. It'll have to be a sometime snack, but whoa, so good. Now, while you can and you should put whatever you like on your chicken sandwich, this is the recommended topping. It is a hot honey, 2 tablespoons of your favorite hot sauce with 2 tablespoons of honey. And I have actually never had a hot honey sandwich until today. And holy moly, I am addicted. I'm obsessed. It's so delicious. This makes this really sweet, tangy, spicy sauce. It's so simple. And you just pour that right over the chicken. There's also a recipe for this. I'm going to call it an aioli. Initially, it says to use some melted butter, but I was out of melted butter, so I poured about a teaspoon of oil into about a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise and mixed that together. Like I said, always use what you have. I had a fresh clove of garlic. I grated that in there. If you don't have fresh, you could always use garlic powder. And a squeeze of some lemon juice. Didn't have fresh lemon, that's fine. And some parsley flakes, about a 1/2 teaspoon. And again, if you have fresh, go ahead and use those. That is actually what the recipe called for, but I didn't, so we used the dried, and it was absolutely delicious. To assemble the sandwich, I just took a toasted hamburger bun that I had left over from my kids' birthday parties, because hey, I already had it. Put some of that sauce on the bottom, placed the chicken on top of that, and drizzled that hot honey right over the top. Added some shreddis, which we always say shreddis makes everything better in this house. Something about it. A little bit more of that aioli over the top, and place that on there. And this is so amazing. It was just, I have no words. It reminds me of, like, you'd go to a place and they'd be like, oh, you got to get the chicken sandwich there. Like, it's so good. That is what it reminds me of. Like, nothing that you could necessarily replicate, except that this is something you can make at home. I serve mine with some green beans and some amazing macaroni and cheese. Next up is for bacon green beans on the skillet or the griddle or whatever you have. I'm cooking mine on a Blackstone grill. You want to get started with about a 1/2 pound of bacon. And if you don't have fresh bacon, you can always add in some bacon bits after the fact, or maybe some of that chopped bacon from Walmart or Costco. If you're not cooking with bacon grease or butter, if you have it, is going to be the best option, because you really want to get that flavor. So I am going to crisp up my bacon, cooking it over a medium heat until it gets nice and crispy to the doneness that you like. Some people like it less, kind of more like this, and I personally like mine to be nice and crispy. Then you want to add in about a 1/2 an onion diced, and we're going to cook this inside that bacon fat, inside that grease, right in with the bacon. And if you're not using fresh bacon, this may be the time to add in those real bacon bits, and then also just cook your onion in with some, again, bacon fat or butter. Cook this for 3 or 4 minutes until your onions are soft. Then you want to add about 3 teaspoons of fresh chopped garlic, or if you don't have that, you can use about a teaspoon of garlic powder. You just want to cook that for about 1 minute until your garlic is fragrant. And then you want to add 1 can of drained whole green beans. I really like this with the whole green beans, so I would recommend using those. And then you can just crisp those up right on your griddle or skillet. and make sure that they are fully covered in all of your bacon fat and grease. Go ahead and add salt and pepper if you like, but I found that there was tons of flavor with just the garlic and onion and bacon fat, and this was amazing. We actually ate this when we were camping. That's why I'm using my Blackstone griddle, because we have like a small camping griddle. So it's a great camping meal because you can just bring the can and open that up and nothing needs to be refrigerated except for that bacon. For this next Not Mama's ramen, this is a gochujang chicken ramen, and look at those colors. I am loving that deep caramelization there. I'm getting started with about 1.5 pounds of chunks of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. Now you can buy them boneless, skinless. You can actually cut them. In a recent video, I showed you how to do that, how to cut the skin off and how to cut the actual chicken off the thigh, and it's a little bit cheaper that way, or you could use breast if that's what you have. Start by pouring a couple tablespoons of olive oil or whatever oil you have over the chicken, then 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 4 teaspoons of smoked paprika, or you could use hot paprika if that's what you like or that's what you have, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I've said it before and I'll say it again, TikTok might be showing me that I underseason my food, and I'm really enjoying working with all these spices lately. Coat the chicken nicely in those spices, and then you want to add a couple tablespoons of olive oil to a hot pan. We're actually going to cook it over medium heat. You want to make sure that you're using medium, because if you use hot with all the spices, it will actually burn the spices. So this is a good tip that I learned from this recipe, and I'm excited to share with you guys. It's something that I never really knew or understood before, and that's something that I love about cooking all the time for my family and using different recipes, is that I learn new things all the time. I guess what they say, practice makes perfect, is true. And hey, there's still some fails in there too, but I love learning new stuff. You just want to cook the chicken until it is fully cooked through, turning regularly. You want to make sure it doesn't get too crispy on one side and not on the other. This turns out so well, and you can see how pretty that chicken is. I love smoked paprika so much. When your chicken is almost done, you do want to get started on some ramen noodles. You can see off to the side there, I do have my pan with boiling water, and I am going to add in 3 containers of the top ramen without the seasoning packet. We're not using the seasoning packet in anything today. We're going to cook those for 1 minute less than the package says, which is 2 minutes. But if you're using a different type, just take 1 minute off whatever the package says. Then to our chicken, you want to add 2 teaspoons of rice wine vinegar, 4 tablespoons of gochujang. Now, if you don't have gochujang, and real chefs, I'm sure, are going to kill me for saying this, I think you could use a combination of barbecue sauce and sriracha. It's a similar flavor, likely. So if you don't have that on hand, go ahead and try that, and I think it would turn out pretty good. You also want to add in 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of honey. Drain and rinse your ramen noodles and then add those right to the pan, and you just want to make sure that you toss them and coat them in the sauce and get them all mixed in with the chicken. And this flavor is so incredible. You can see that color there. I love that red brown gochujang combined with smoked paprika, and those flavors together are really make this dish. We are making a sauce with this, but when you think about it, we're really just using 2 main ingredients, your chicken and your ramen noodles. So it can be pretty inexpensive, and it is so amazing just relying on those spices and that sauce. You do want to top it with a drizzle of some sesame oil if you have it at the end, and some chopped up cilantro, but those things are not necessary. I also think that some toasted sesame seeds would taste good on this. Again, whatever you have, maybe even some diced scallions, that would add a pop of color. I did serve mine with some pork pot stickers that I just steamed up on the side, and we had such a great meal. This is another one that is a 5 out of 5 for the adults. The kids thought it was a little bit spicy, but they still ate the whole thing, so I was super excited, happy, and proud. I want to thank you for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the 22 top meals of 2022. If you want to see some more amazing recipes, go ahead and click on this video right here where you can see 10 amazing chicken recipes. Happy New Year!